Can I piggyback off that real quick?
Yeah.
So I feel like that might have been somewhat directed like toward me, but I'm not trying to insinuate that either. And like I know based on like my amazing relationship that I'm in that like there are good men out there, and I'm not trying to suggest otherwise. But I will also say it came to mind as that person mentioned an incel podcast. There was a statistic, I can't remember where, but you can definitely pull it up online. And it was a study that showed that incel men, and this is a proven study, are more violent and aggressive, and incel women are more depressed and like different, they suffer different like avoidant personality traits than incel men. And there's a study on this.
There. I mean, there's so much there. First off, I don't know what study you're referring to. I've actually seen other studies that seem to indicate that compared to the general population, men who are incels are actually less likely to be violent. But your assertion that there are even female incels is just laughable.
There are.
There's no, woman cannot be involuntarily celibate.
There are.
No.
We can agree to disagree.
There's no agreeing to disagree. A woman cannot be an incel.
I'm not gonna.
Here's the metric of what it takes to be an incel. So
I know what it means.
Oh, tell me what incel stands for.
Involuntarily celibate.
Involuntarily celibate.
Yes.
So let's assume that the metric to be involuntarily celibate is somebody who's incapable of securing a sexual relationship. Now, we need to, for the sake of this conversation, we need to exclude people who, for religious reasons, are waiting until marriage.
That's
generally
voluntary.
Speaking.
Yeah, I agree.
Generally speaking, now you can say that there's a certain social climate that where in previous times that was a social norm, and you would have not had such an issue finding a marriageable partner. But let's look at it perhaps from a more secular view. So you have a bunch of men who, despite efforts to get even casual sex, are unable to. They can't get a relationship, they can't get casual sex, they can't get anything. My position on this is that any woman, regardless of her physical appearance, she could be obese even, if she was inclined to have a casual sexual encounter with a man of comparable physical attractiveness, could do so very easily.
I think it's circumstantial. I think there are less female incels, but they exist. Like there are people across the world that don't have the same privilege we do of going out into a busy city like Los Angeles or Santa Barbara or New York and just meeting anyone. There are people in the middle of nowhere who get bullied. There are forums where there are like incel women who feel worthless or like low self-esteem and cannot and struggle with getting laid and feel like they're a burden.
Okay, let me ask you a question. So let's remove this argument of, well, there's women that live in the sticks in a 200 population city. Let's say that there's male incels in New York City. Let's assume there are, right?
I assume there's much.
Let's assume. Are there female incels in New York City? Because you made it a geographic thing.
I wouldn't know, but I'm not sure. Honestly, you could be right. There might be none in New York City. I don't know. In New York City is very liberal and very sexually free. Like maybe everyone's fucking everyone. I don't know. I don't keep a tally on them all.
Okay, so
but I will say there are female incels in the world.
No, there's not, because a woman cannot be involuntarily.
Yes, they can.
Any woman, regardless of her, she could be. How do I explain?
I think
this?
It could also be a mental thing.
An obese woman who's incredibly unattractive can still procure casual sex.
And I think it could also
Easily.
be a mental thing.
What do you mean a mental thing?
Have you ever seen Catfish?
No, you'll have to explain it to me.
You've never seen Catfish? Oh, okay. So, or allegedly you've never seen Catfish. Cool.
No, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, wow. So I think it's a mental health thing too, because a lot of like the women that go on there pretending to be someone else in hopes of finding like a partner, they are not unattractive. It's a mental thing that keeps them from being able to pursue someone and like a desire to be someone else or something. Like there is a mental health aspect to it too for women. But they exist. There's incel females that exist.
That makes no sense. Look, so let's say one of these women who is absolutely batshit insane but is not unattractive went out into the middle of the street and hung a sign around her neck which said, "Please come over here and have sexual intercourse with me." Would a man go and do that with her or no?
Mm-hmm. I don't like this hypothetical. I'm not gonna. It's like
Checkmate.
Yeah. So can he answer the question for me?
I don't know. It depends on where she is. I mean, I would hope not. If she's clearly mentally ill, I would hope no one's trying to take advantage of like a mentally ill
Yeah,
woman
but
who's
if
bad
she
shit on the
did,
street. I don't know.
hold the sign around her neck and the sign said, "I want to have sex with whatever random man will have sex with me right now." Is she getting some or not?
Depends where.
Okay, basically
literally
in
depends
any
where.
place that you can think of, other than the middle of a forest.
But like I said, the middle of the
not
forest
in the middle
is
of a forest.
the
She's
middle
in
of
some
nowhere
kind of
is my best
metropolitan
example.
area.
I don't think that in New York it's as difficult, and I stated that. I'm not going against like anything I've stated. I've like tried to
Forget
break
New
it down.
York. She lives in the rural countryside, and she just goes next to a main road where people are passing by in trucks and semis, and she's got the sign around her neck. Is she getting some?
I don't know. Maybe she's getting trafficked. I hope not. But dear God, I don't know. I can't imagine. That's such an outlandish like concept.
But you're the one who's
it's a
proposing.
hypothetical which is designed to
I'm not
test your
proposing,
logic.
I'm just
the logic
stating, like,
of you is to say
there
there's
are-
a mental illness. There's a mental illness which exists, which can prevent women from pursuing relationships. I agree, but that wouldn't actually make them FEMCELS, because even if they were mentally ill, if they chose to have sex with a man, they're going to get some.
Here's how I see
Right?
it. Okay.
How do you
to
see
make
it?
it make sense. There are
wait,
8
wait,
billion.
hold on.
Okay.
Grid One
Yeah.
Motorsports donated $100. The mental health issues are sitting at this table. A lot of cope and transference going on, mostly cope. Feminism has failed you all. Please do better. The patriarchy stands ready to help.
Thank you, Grid One. Appreciate it. What's your? Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. The patriarchy part.
Just
like,
go
I'm
ahead,
sorry.
go ahead, go
Okay.
ahead.
My take was there's 8 billion people in the world. You're not gonna tell me that there is not a single femcel on this earth.
No.
There you
Well,
go.
so let us assume for a second that there's at least one. So what?
Ben, I win. I don't know.
You win
like,
what?
That was just
Yeah,
my point.
you
They
don't know,
exist.
right?
They exist. That's just my point. They exist.
Okay,
I didn't say they're at the
so-
same caliber statistic
Okay,
as men.
so I'll just concede this then and say at least one exists somewhere due to the fact that she has no arms, no legs,
That's so
it's totally
unfortunate.
blind. Nobody can see her. She's in the middle of a forest. Fine, I'll concede that such a woman somewhere might exist. But can we say that overwhelmingly they do not? And that's
I
what, by
would
the way,
say-
it's not 8 billion
I would not
people we'd
say
be referencing here. It would
overwhelmingly
be
they
4
do not.
billion, right? 4 billion, because only half can be women.
I think the lingo is just opposite here, but like we're not like arguing. It's just you're not agreeing with my phrasal of it that
And that would be an argument.
well, we're saying the same thing. You're just paraphrasing
No,
it
we're
and
not
don't
saying
like
the
the way
same
I'm
thing.
phrasing
We're saying
it.
different things. I'm just
I mean-
conceding to a portion of what you're saying so that we can move the conversation forward, so I can show you that still, even if we were to grant that what you're saying is right, the overwhelming majority of what you would consider to be incels are not going to be women. And because they're such a social outlier, it's irrelevant to even count them into the incel movement.
I don't think it's fair to count anybody out. But see, we can agree to disagree on that.
Oh, it's
I
not
just think
fair?
I think they exist. I think it's determined they exist. We could like tally everyone in the world. There's femcells out there. They exist. And whether or not you choose to believe them, if you want to believe they're unicorns and not human beings that exist on this planet, that's fine. Like, you're entitled to that.
I mean, I don't actually know how to have a conversation with you if I'll concede a basic point that you make, but you won't concede a basic point I make.
I don't agree.
You don't agree
That's
with
the
what?
conversation.
That
I don't
even
agree
that
that
even
they-
if femcells exist, that the overwhelming majority of incels are going to be males.
I agree with that. I don't agree with the notion you stated that we can agree that because it's such a low statistic, they don't exist. I don't agree with that.
Yeah, but if it's an aberration, why do we care about it? Why is it important? If it's just an aberration, why would we give a shit?
I don't know, to care about
Yeah, you're right.
everyone
You
on
don't
Earth,
know.
to care about every.
That's the problem.
I'm saying I don't know, like I'm saying I don't know sarcastically, like for obvious reasons. I don't know.
No, well, what's the obvious reason?
Like just.
Why would we care about aberrations when we're talking about these in general terms? I don't get it. Like if you say, okay, 1 in a million of these incels happens to be a woman, who cares?
With
That's
8
an
billion
exception.
people on
Which
Earth,
that
that's still a
exception
lot.
itself actually proves the rule, right?
I mean, statistically, 1 in a million out of 8 billion is a decent chunk of people, but like, I digress.
That would be 4 billion. It couldn't be 8 billion because
Okay,
half of
yeah,
the
that's
population
reasonable.
are men.
That's reasonable. I agree. Yeah.
Okay,
You're
so
right.
anyway, but back to this. I'm just saying that obviously it's an aberration. So when you say they don't exist, you're talking about such a statistically low volume of people. There's no actual reason to include them into this stat. It makes no sense to do so. because
If you don't want to,
they
you
just
don't
really
have
don't
to.
exist.
I acknowledge they exist.
Okay, fine. I acknowledge also that there could be a woman somewhere who could fit this profile. Now that I've acknowledged that, can you acknowledge that almost none of them do?
I mean,
No, I
almost
can't do
none.
that, Andrew.
Almost
Why
none.
would
I think
ever
no. I'm not
concede to her for a
disagreeing.
good point?
Whoa, relax. Statistically, I think that last statement is correct. Almost
Okay.
none of them. Statistically, I agree with that, Mr. Jumping at it. No,
Great. Well, then if we agree with that, then who gives a shit? Then he's right.
I do. I
Essentially,
care
when we
about that
talk
little
about this,
percentage.
there's no reason to include females in the data
I don't know. I
because
care about them.
there's essentially not any of them.
Okay.
So
I care about the no ones.
You're essentially arguing, for example, if I were to sit here and say humans have 10 fingers and 10 toes,
Okay.
that's a fair general statement
That's a
to
much
make.
more countable
Grid 1
statistic.
Motorsports donated $100. Even Helen Keller got laid, and she was deaf,
Wow.
dumb, and blind.
Nice.
You will never agree, as you know that the second you do agree, your entire worldview must change.
No.
Seriously, be better.
yes, that's awesome.
At least you understand I'll never agree.
Just and look to end up my point about the 10 fingers, 10 toes.
Yeah.
There are some people out there who have 11 fingers, 11 toes. They're born
So cool.
with a, it's a genetic anomaly, basically. But it's not wrong to state that humans have 10 fingers and 10 toes.
Yeah. I just feel like that's a much more trackable statistic.
Well, I mean,
But some of them don't, Brian. Some of them don't have 10 fingers and 10 toes.
yeah, I mean, it's, I don't even know where that convo came from.
I don't know where we're going with this either. Like,
I
we
did
can
have
agree to
I did have
disagree.
one question for you, if you don't mind. Just the last one. How would you feel if you didn't eat breakfast this morning?
Me?
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah. How
What
would
do you mean?
Feel, how would you feel if you didn't eat breakfast this morning?
How I feel right now because I didn't eat breakfast this morning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wait, what's the bit?
What's the punchline?
What's the?
Well, so this is. Now I read this on Reddit, so you can't take it too seriously. Okay, but apparently there's a phenomenon which happens where if you ask a person if they've eaten breakfast this morning and they just give you the status of whether they did or didn't eat breakfast this morning, that they can't engage in hypotheticals. However, if you ask them if they've eaten breakfast this morning and they say, well, or how would you feel if you didn't eat breakfast this morning, and they say, oh, I'd feel bad, or I wouldn't feel great, or I'd feel hungry, then they are engaging in
Interesting.
hypotheticals. And as you saw, she stated the fact that she did or didn't eat it rather than how she would actually feel if she did or didn't eat it. That's the point of the question.
Ah, all right. Okay. Interesting. I think really what it comes down to, though, is any woman has the capacity to be a slut. Any woman has the capacity to sell sex. Very few men have the capacity to be a slut. Very few men have even fewer men have the capacity to sell sex.
I have a question to that though. Whose fault is that?
Doesn't matter whose fault it is.
No, I'm seriously asking. Like, historically, can we date, like, did women start the sex trade or did men?
It's probably, what? Okay, well,
like, did men proposition it's woman, or did
I mean, women often, a lot of women will come on the show and say, well, prostitution is one of the world's oldest professions.
Just asking if
it probably started out like, oh, look at that strong caveman over there who just got a fish. Let me offer some pussy for some fish or something.
But what if
that's how it started?
What if the caveman saw her and was like, look, my fish, like,
give
who
me
knows?
Some,
like, give me some, yeah, like, it could have been, what came first, the chicken or the egg? I don't know.
Who knows? Who knows? I don't. We'll have to check in with a fucking
the caveman
archaeologist or some shit. Okay. I don't know where to go with that one. Let me get into my pre-show notes here.